Welcome back to the Daily Fantasy Edge. I'm your host, Peter Jennings. I go by CSURAM88 across the daily fantasy industry. And as always, joined by Adam Levitan and Al Zeidenfeld. Happy holidays to you guys and everyone else and all our listeners, all 7 of you. Al, how was Christmas in LA?
It was chilly. I'm never going to say that it's cold in Los Angeles, but it was chilly. It was like 50 degrees the last few days. Made some tamales, which is our yearly, being part of a multicultural family. Like we had tamales and potato latkes. That was Christmas Eve dinner. So it was pretty delicious, the Christmas side and the Hanukkah side. So I had a pretty good day, but Adam hates everything. So he'd probably hate all of those food items.
I like tamales and latkes are amazing. Yeah, I like both those. Maybe I should come to your house.
You should have. I only have one guest room, so you're going to have to fight Pete and Ashley for it.
Instead of carcass, have some good tamales and some latkes. Sounds good.
Levitan, I have an important question for you, and I don't want this to – I know this is potentially a long answer, but just real quickly, your power rankings on holidays. We know how much you despise Thanksgiving, but just a quick power ranking of, like, the main holidays.
Yeah. Wait, can we guess this one first? Can we guess?
Go ahead, Al.
His number one holiday is going to be Halloween because he could dress up like his dog.
Yep, that's a fact.
That's number one. Second favorite holiday?
I'm going Christmas.
You're going Christmas? I think it's New Year's because he just gets to sleep in and do nothing the whole day. I think those are his 2 favorite holidays. Adam, tell us.
Well, first of all, I never get to sleep in. You know that, Al. I have 2 kids.
Yeah.
For sure, Halloween is number one. I mean, Halloween is just good fun. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's in a good mood. Everybody is out frolicking outside. Halloween is undoubtedly number one. There's no big commitment to chit-chat to talk about the weather. And, it's just like, God, all the other ones, all of the holidays happen to fall during NFL season. That's really, like, the biggest stress point for me if we're being serious. Like, so all these holidays that fall during NFL season that have family obligations are just a total epic disaster. So yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think about it. Maybe I'll answer on the solo pod next week.
All right. Question from Pete now. We also have a Week 17 slate to get to. I know it's a big one. And also, we're recording after Christmas. We're here on Thursday. It's Week 17. Motivation's a huge factor. Adam's done a lot of work on that. We still don't know everything that's going to happen, but we will dive into what we do know and what we'll be speculating on. Adam, any other news and notes before we dive into this big slate?
There is a Week 17 listener league. Go to DK Playbook, find the logo, then find the link to go ahead and get in there. And yeah, I mean, just generally speaking about Week 17, undoubtedly my favorite week of the year. Like, you're going to see people playing guys who are risks to be taken out at halftime or risks to not play at all. You're going to see, there's a lot of soft stuff going on, and, even stuff with like Christian McCaffrey and there's other records to look at. And there's just a lot more to look at than normal. So, it's a 15-game slate. It's a lot of work, but I expect to be rewarded for the work this week, God willing.
All right. With that, let's dive into the slate. It is a big one. Make sure you're leveraging late swap, and it's just different because the NFL has to schedule this with all the playoff implications in mind. So all the games here on Sunday, big early slate, big late slate, you can take advantage of that with optimal strategy. Browns at Bengals is the first game, Adam, and the Browns are favored by 3 with a 43.5 total. What a crazy game the Bengals just played in Miami. What are the news and notes? And obviously there's no motivation here, I believe.
Yeah, correct. Both teams are dead, have been dead for a few weeks here, and really there's nothing new. I mean, this is one of the few games where I don't actually have a lot of notes. The biggest note that I had was we saw John Ross last week return to a full-time role, playing over 80% of the snaps and lining up in the slot. And, John Ross has really only played 4 full games all year, and he's had 3 really, really good games. And yeah, garbage time aided, but he's had 3 really, really good games in those. And dude, I mean, just one of the fastest players in the field. I know Peter's talked about a lot in a joking manner. Like, there's something to be said for being the fastest guy on the field. So I think John Ross down at, I think he's 4,500 this week. Given that we know he's now back ahead of Alex Erickson, I think makes some sense. And the other thing I had was on the Joe Mixon stuff. I know a lot of people and got off Joe Mixon last week because he had diarrhea or whatever. He had a lethargic video during pregame. Still ended up touching the ball 23 times. Still had 85% of the running back touches. So, I don't think Joe Mixon was mailing it in. Maybe he was at the strip club in Miami too late the night before, but I don't think that should affect him here. It seems like his usage is intact. So, yeah, this is a game where it's more straightforward than the others, I think.
You think he was up in Tootsie's getting shoulder rubs?
I mean, that's allegedly.
Miami flu has struck many athletes in the past. I think Mixon was yet another victim.
I do think you're spot on with John Ross. 6 catches on 13 targets last week, including Adam. Do we like air yards?
Love.
Air yards are a thing?
They are.
Okay, they're a thing. He had 276 of them last week.
Yeah.
That is the highest in a game this season in Cleveland, along the 10th highest deep completion rate this year at 46.7%. As I always say, you guys know that I like it when the puzzle pieces fit together. So here's a situation where the puzzle pieces kind of fit together.
Yeah, you guys are stealing my thunder. I've been the biggest John Ross truther. I talk about the 40-yard dash, the YouTube highlights, and now he's like actually a great play.
Now he's the chalk.
now he's like, I think he is going to be chalk. So that's kind of a weird thing for me to decipher in tournaments. I mean, you want to be fading these, chalky receivers that have a wide range of outcomes, but I have such a man crush on John Ross, and I'm so biased. I just feel like I should lock button him. I mean, everything is perfect here for him. He has such big upside, but I'm probably just a chalk donkey here, Levitan. How are we handling the game theory?
No, I don't know. There's going to be a lot of stuff that'll open up, and I don't think John Ross's ownership is going to be out of control. I could end up being wrong, but so much is going to depend on like if Josh Jacobs gets ruled out or other things like what the Rams do with Gurley and Malcolm Brown. There's going to be a lot of stuff that goes on that's going to affect ownership. So I did do my first run this morning, but it's super fluid right now.
There's also 4 or 5 more games on this slate. Like there's no Thursday night game. There's no Monday night game. There's no 3 Saturday games. We're not talking about 11 or a 12 or a 13 game slate or bye weeks or anything else. This 15 game slate, a lot of games on this slate. So I don't know if ownership's going to be as high as people think on the most popular players.
Yeah. And speaking of which, they should do a 3-game slate no Thursday night football. Just make a 3-game slate every Saturday. We have 2 days of awesome, fantasy, and that would be a really good change. One other note on this game: Andy Dalton 5,900, Baker Mayfield 5,700. Would have been funny if you saw those salaries at the end of the year coming into the season. Baker Mayfield just wildly underperformed, and this Cleveland team did not live up to the offseason hype. Let's keep it moving. We do have 15 games. Dolphins at Patriots is the next one. Patriots are favored by 16 here, the 44.5 total. I feel like that's a lot of disrespect to Fitzmagic, who's been awesome, but obviously the Patriots here, they're at home, and we've seen some really big spreads, and they've covered them. So, Adam, what are the news and notes? How are you attacking this game, and obviously the motivation?
Yeah, Patriots are extremely motivated. They can clinch a first-round bye with a win, so they'll be all out here. Julian Edelman, I think, has been playing hurt, man, and he's still. I mean, maybe he's better this week, and with time, maybe he's getting better. But if he were healthy in this spot, this would just be an awesome, awesome spot for Julian Edelman. Still is an awesome, awesome spot. On the Dolphins side, one of the reasons that the Dolphins have been so profitable in fantasy is like they're so inept at running the football. And so we know they're going to throw it, and we know who they're going to throw it to. And, Ryan Fitzpatrick just puts up fantasy numbers and gives his receivers chances. The problem is against New England, like that's not what you should be doing. I expect Stephon Gilmore to be on Devontae Parker, and Ryan Fitzpatrick 40 dropbacks against this New England secondary. I don't think the outcome is going to be good. So it's just, I've been so high on Miami's pass game. I think, we all have, and just Miami games in general. This one, I think, sets up as bad as it possibly could for the Miami pass game.
So you're saying play Patrick Laird?
Play who?
You're saying play Laird.
How much money has been dusted off on the Laird and Savior by the hardcore DFS?
A lot of money has been thrown his way.
Such a good dude, though. I hate to say anything bad about
Laird. Nothing wrong with the guy. It's just like people found a folk hero and just like, take my money, please. The other take my money, please this week, I guess, is going to be Sony Michel.
Oh, he looks good, right? On paper.
Right? Like, it's Sony Michel chalk week, and that scares the ever living poop out of me because he needs to score touchdowns in order to really have a big day, because he's not going to contribute in the passing game at all. Maybe if he has 150 rushing yards, that gets you 18 points. But if he doesn't have any touchdowns to go along with it, then it's not really a massive, massive day on a huge slate where we know that people are going to have massive days. There is going to be a Matt Flynn on this slate. We just may not know who it is. So if Sony Michel finds his way into the end zone, which there does seem to be a distinct possibility that he will, expanded touchdown equity for a guy against the Dolphins here, but like we've seen goal line touches get usurped by Burkhead. We've seen him get taken away by Bolden. We know what a talent James White is. If Michel is utilized the way he was in the first couple of playoff games that they played last year, where there's just Sony Michel drives where they just feed him the ball 6-7 times, including the ones inside the 5, Sony Michel could absolutely break this slate. There is no doubt that as a part of the meat of his bell curve, there are some games where he has 25 to 32 fantasy points. There are also games where he, very realistically has like 11 or 9. He has like 95 yards rushing and no catches, right?
60
I don't know if he
yards.
can have 6. I don't know if 6 is a part of the meat of the bell curve this week.
Last week, what did he do?
40 carries over the last 2 weeks. They are going to just give him the ball. If they get a lead, he's going to be using that LeGarrette Blount type role. Last week, he ended with 11.1. The week before, 11.3. He's only 4.9K. So, I think his floor is somewhat elevated based on recent usage and the situation that this game sits in, right? So, I don't think he's got a 3 or a 4-point floor as a part of the meat of the bell curve. Maybe as the way extreme end of it, yes. But, in terms of realistic outcomes, I think he's got a bit of an elevated floor with the possibility for a really high ceiling, but that ceiling is 100% dependent on touchdowns, as opposed to other players that are more involved in the pass game who can get there without scoring touchdowns.
Yeah, 6 is not part of me. I shouldn't have said that, but there are a lot of games where he gets 80, 90 yards rushing, doesn't score, and that's
no catches.
That's the downside. But great play with the Patriots defense. That'll probably be a somewhat correlated, or that's obviously correlated, but probably a pretty popular stack that you see people leverage. The secondary plays in this game are really tough. I think Adam hit the nail on the head. We've been very bullish on these Miami games. Now they go into the stoneware spot. And I really could see, the Patriots defense has broken the slate multiple times this year. And Fitzmagic, I love his aggressiveness and the way he scrambles and throws the ball up. But man, this could be just a brutal spot, especially with all the motivation for the Patriots and the line. The market's telling us something there. So yeah, the secondary plays for me would be, you load up on someone like maybe Sanu. I don't know. It's hard to trust all these Patriots guys, but he'd be my favorite one just because I do agree with Adam that Edelman is hurt. And then on the Dolphins side, I think it's just super thin regardless. Any other final thoughts here, boys, or you guys keep moving?
Keep it moving, but Brady stacks don't look horrible.
Yeah.
Or even
if you had to run it back,
if you didn't
want
to pick it, just naked Brady.
Yeah, that's true.
If you don't want to try and pick who he throws the ball to because nobody's going to get great usage.
Yeah. Bears at Vikings is next, 37 total. Vikings favored by a point. The Vikings just laid an all-time egg. Adam, news, notes, motivation.
Vikings are now locked into the NFC's number 6 seed. They have zero motivation whatsoever. So, they've had some quotes, what they would play to win. That's what all these coaches say. When it comes down to it, I'd be shocked if Dalvin or Madison played. So I think we'll see again Mike Boone and Amir Abdullah kind of split the work. And obviously Abdullah, Boone just wasn't effective and Abdullah came in and he was their clear pass down back. I don't know if they're going to play Kirk Cousins. The backup is Sean Mannion. I would doubt they play Adam Thielen, but I don't know. So, if Sean Mannion starts with Mike Boone and Abdullah and no Kyle Rudolph, Irv Smith or something like that is in there, and maybe Steph Diggs doesn't play and number one receiver is BC Johnson, it's really ugly for the Vikings. So, there'll be some value opportunities there. I think that they'll be pretty thin, especially against the Bears defense. The Bears have obviously been dead for a while. So for them to catch the Vikings second stringers, I think would be somewhat intriguing. And we've seen Trubisky have some big games lately. Anthony Miller and Allen Robinson, I think, would be the primary beneficiaries of those. So certainly an interesting game to hear, and we will be needing to pay attention to what the Vikings are doing closely.
Yeah, and we just don't have those answers yet. So as you said, if they're playing a JV squad against this Bears defense is only 2,100. Are we interested in the Bears defense against the Vikings JVs?
I was interested in the Bears defense against the first
starters.
Yeah.
They're only 2,100. So yeah, I think that they're definitely viable.
Yeah, where did that price come from? That is odd.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough game to evaluate given we don't know what the Vikings are going to do. But yeah, Bears defense and Allen Robinson's a baller. I mean, he just is such a talented dude. And, Trubisky missed him wide open for a really long touchdown last week, of course. And hopefully he has a good quarterback at some point in his career. Obviously, Penn State guy. Levitan loves him. I love him. He's hopefully a play that we can at least consider and could get upgraded depending on what the Vikings do. I don't think there's much else to talk about here with the uncertainty. Let's move to the Chargers at Chiefs, where Chiefs are favored by 8.5, 45 total on the game. Adam, news, notes, and motivation.
Yeah, so KC is live to get a bye, but they would need the Patriots to lose at home to the Dolphins. So, how often does that happen? I don't know what the money line is, but probably 8% or 10%, or I don't even know.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Yeah, there's certainly a chance. So the thing is, if New England's winning, though, KC still has to win to get the number 3 seed, but they're not going to fall to worse than the 4 seed. So how much do they care about being the 3 seed versus the 4 seed? I don't know. Still, I think that given the Dolphins have some chance to win, that KC's going to play this game to win. It just scares me a little bit because Andy Reid's been so aggressive about resting starters in situations before in week 17. So I don't know. I still think that Damian Williams is firmly in play. Spencer Ware joined Darrell Williams on IR, and we know they've been healthy scratching LaShawn McCoy when they can. Darwin Thompson is not someone they've trusted. So I think Damian Williams has a pretty clear path to feature back role here. On the other side, could be Phillip Rivers' last game as a Charger. And they've been playing to win. They just haven't been winning. They go out there with awesome skill players and they just suck every week. So I don't know. I got really lucky. Played Melvin Gordon last week, and he was really lucky to get 2 touchdowns in a game where he averaged 0.5 yards per carry or something like that. And KC's defense, I should note, has been playing way, way, way better. Over the last 5-6 weeks, I mean, Kansas City's defense has been legit. So tough spot, I think, for Phillip Rivers for possibly his last game as a Charger.
Austin Eckler costs more than Melvin Gordon and is getting 10 touches a game.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I don't even know if it's not anything actionable. Just looking at the salaries, I'm how is that even a thing that he costs more? But as you said, they've got so many different weapons and a coaching staff that doesn't seem to realize or understand how to capitalize on any of them unless 3 of them are out. It puts us in a weird situation. So when they've got all the toys, right? It's almost like the peak Belichick, right? Whenever he had everybody at his disposal, we couldn't play anybody. But once he lost 2 or 3 of the pieces, we could just say, okay, we're going to play Gronk and Edelman and Lewis because those are the only 3 that were left because all the volume was going to go their way. We can't really say that with the Los Angeles Chargers because they've got Keenan Allen, they've got Mike Williams, Williams had a really solid floor with 50 yards receiving or more in 8 straight games, right? And he had 1 game with 45 and then had 72 and 74 and 83. But he hasn't really had a monster week this year. Keenan Allen started off really hot. So did Eckler until Gordon got back and took his role. Hunter Henry is just kind of up and down every single week. So I kind of feel like we're just throwing darts every time we just play Chargers position players. And with all that talent at his disposal, Phil Rivers hasn't even had a lot of great games. The one constant that I want to play every single week in these games, outside of the fact that I think you're 100% right on the running back situation for Kansas City, Adam. At 4,700, Williams is just too cheap. But Travis Kelce has been very Travis Kelce in the last couple of weeks, and he's been very consistent all season long with or without Patrick Mahomes having a monster game. Travis Kelce has basically produced. If he has a big game, if Mahomes has one of his games from last year where he has 370 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns, obviously Travis Kelce has more access to a 30-plus point ceiling. But his floor has been in the mid-teens pretty much every single week for the past 2-3 months.
Yeah. It's a really interesting game from a DFS perspective. Getting into the motivation here, Levitan, I did actually go and look. So we take the odds from our friends at DraftKings. The Patriots are minus 910, and you can get the Dolphins at plus 700. That works out actually to a VIG-free price of minus 720.8 or plus 720.8, giving the Dolphins a 12.18% chance to win the game from a VIG-free perspective. So that's, not a ton, but 12 percenters, they can hit. The Dolphins have beat the Patriots. So I think the Chiefs will play their guys, and Damian Williams stands out in a big way. I think Tyreek Hill always has slate breaking upside. And on the Chargers side, you can make an argument for a lot of guys like you just went through. It's throwing darts to a degree. My favorite would probably be Keenan Allen, I guess. But I don't mind game stacks on this one because I do think the Chiefs will end up going all out considering the game started at the same time. And 12%, I mean, that's a huge thing. And one other just sports betting related thing, Chiefs futures have gotten a lot of talk on Twitter. And something that really impacts the futures price is going to be obviously the buys. And, you can get the Chiefs around like plus 700, plus 750. If they did somehow get the buy, that number would move in a huge way. So if you have any faith in the Dolphins, that's an interesting sports betting side. And then for DFS, I think that it's worth stacking up the Chiefs. Like I'd be very surprised if they sat their guys. Wouldn't you, Levitan?
Yeah. Oh, they're definitely going to start with them. But if the Patriots are up like 30-0 at halftime,
Yeah. And the coaches definitely know about that stuff, don't you think? Like people act like, oh, we don't care. We're focused on ourselves. But like at halftime, Andy Reid has to like know that, right?
I mean, for some coaches, I would say that they're just like hard asses who just play it through. But Andy Reid always wants to rest his guys in these spots.
He's thinking ahead with like LaShawn McCoy resting him. Yeah, so that's a really good point and just an interesting dynamic there. Let's move to the Jets at Bills. Bills are favored by 2 points, 36 total. A lot of nonsense going on with this Jets organization. What are the news, notes, and motivation here, Adam?
Yeah, Bills are locked into the number 5 seed, so no motivation whatsoever for the Bills. They claim they're going to play their guys. Maybe they treat it like a preseason game where Josh Allen and Devin Singletary and John Brown play like a quarter, then they take them out. If it was me, I wouldn't play them at all. I would start Matt Barkley and I don't even know who their like third or fourth stringers are, but I would play a bunch of those guys. And they'll create some value there. I mean, Matt Barkley is not inept. Like Matt Barkley can put up fantasy numbers, particularly against this Jets secondary. So that would be something to look at. Foster's Australian for sex. Honestly,
this was coming.
It's just coming to me right now. $1 million. Matt Barkley to Foster's Australian for sex. On the other side, same old story for the Jets, just kind of is what it is at this point for the Jets. Obviously, if the Bills play their second string defense, it's a benefit to the Jets guys. But I think the Bills scheme is just really, really good. And second stringers obviously know the scheme. And I wouldn't have too high of hopes for the Jets here at the Ralph, even against second stringers.
Unless we get news that we know for sure that specific players are sitting, which vacates snaps and targets and allows us to have access to guys like Robert Foster or whoever else, I don't want to play a single player from this game. Pete?
Okay. No. I don't really have anything to add to that, Al, because I don't really have any players that I'm too excited about. I mean, Le'Veon Bell sounds like he's going to be out. Robbie Anderson to the Dolphins. I'd love to see that. I mean, it's a 36 total.
You don't mean out in this game. You mean out after the season.
Yeah, one and done.
Yeah, sorry. I should clarify that. I just the Jets seem like a mess. We don't know what the Bills are going to do. It's a 36 total. Just like there's nothing I can say right now that'd be even remotely helpful. So I think we can safely move on to the Packers at Lions. Packers 12-point favorites, 43 total. All the motivation in the world for the Packers, Adam. And what are the news and notes here?
Yeah, it's reflected in the line, obviously, that the Packers need to win this game to get a bye. So they will be all out facing Detroit. One thing I noticed during that game on, what night was that? Monday night? It looked like Jamal Williams banged up his shoulder. I haven't been able to find much about it, but I think that was part of the reason that Aaron Jones had his highest snap rate since week 4. I'm going to look more into that. Kerryon Johnson did indeed return last week for whatever reason. I just don't play Lions running backs, like ever. But, if you watch the game on Monday, I think you saw pretty clearly what Aaron Rodgers' plan is. Like Devontae Adams is just like playing pitch and catch out there. And yeah, Devontae Adams will likely see Darius Slay, but not worried about it too much with the chemistry that Rodgers and Devontae Adams have. So, you could make a case, I think, especially if you think that, well, we'll get to the Saints stuff a little later, but, Devontae Adams is clearly a step below Julio Jones and Michael Thomas, but it's still a pretty good spot for Devontae Adams, I think.
And you don't need to stack him with Aaron Rodgers either. Right? To me, that's the key. Like, he does not need, your lineups do not need Aaron Rodgers that have Devontae Adams in him to put yourself in a position to win tournaments, because Devontae Adams can get there on volume alone without scoring touchdowns. If he scores touchdowns, great. But Aaron Rodgers just hasn't, in this offense, Aaron Rodgers has not really put up the numbers that old Aaron Rodgers puts up, 25 to 35 fantasy points a week. If he puts up 14, Devontae Adams can still have 25 plus. So to me, that's where it goes. Yes, you were right. Williams did leave last week's game with a shoulder injury. Any times that Williams has been out, Aaron Jones has just been an absolute monster, but he is priced as a monster this week against a really bad running defense, albeit on the road. They are massive favorites. If Williams sits this week, Aaron Jones at 8,200, I believe, is in play mostly because, one, I don't think ownership is going to be that high on anybody because of how many games there are and how much value there's going to be. But where we sit right now at the recording time of this podcast, which is, Thursday morning at 9:45 for me on the West Coast, the best coast, the only viable time zone that there exists in this country, we're at a spot where all the value's at running back. So paying up for an $8,200 running back, where there are guys like you just mentioned, like Thomas, like Julio Jones, like Devontae Adams, like Travis Kelce has mentioned before, the value right now sits at running back. And if you want to be contrarian, play two expensive running backs. I think that Jones is even behind guys like Christian McCaffrey and guys like Ezekiel Elliott, as much as these other two guys really dislike Ezekiel Elliott because he's fat and isn't Tony Pollard.
Oh, yeah. Get Tony Pollard in there. Aaron Jones, I mean, he has a really high ceiling, which we've seen so many times, including last week. So for tournaments, I think he's clearly a really strong play, as is Devontae Adams. I think Kenny Golladay would be the guy I'd want to run it back with for the Lions. I don't think you have to play Aaron Rodgers stacks. You can play some of the pieces. You can play a mini stack of this game within other stacks of tournament teams. That's kind of how I'm looking at the game. I mean, I think those are all going to be the options that people look at. Is there any secondary piece that we could get a lot of leverage on? Maybe Dusty Danny?
Dusty Danny!
Yeah.
I can't believe you still called him Dusty Danny. He's so good. If you saw Dusty Danny in the street, imagine you just looking at Dusty Danny and calling him that.
Oh, dude, I got a lot of respect for Dusty Danny. You should Google Dusty Danny girlfriends and
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah.
It would just be hilarious just to see you guys right next to each other and like an audio clip of you calling him Dusty Danny. That'd be perfect.
No, man. I mean, I think David Blow or Blau or whatever has
Bling Bling Blau.
Bling Bling Blau has been exposed as not a really viable NFL quarterback. So I think Golladay can get there, but it's hard for me to be excited about Dusty Danny.
Yeah.
12 sacks over the last 3 weeks for the Packers D.
Yeah.
Bottom
the nice thing with Golladay is that he just gets Blau is not good. I think we can all agree on that, but at least he throws it up to Golladay. We've seen that. I was in a Thanksgiving game and just some other times. I mean, he's missed him when Galladay's done a great job getting wide open, but at least there's some deep targets and a path to a ceiling game. Moving to the Saints at Panthers, a 45.5 total here. We've alluded to it. There's records on the line and a lot of things. There's news, notes, and motivation here, Adam.
Yeah. There's a lot here. Let me start with the Panthers first. And I was looking back and last year, obviously Ron Rivera was still there, but last year they finally took their foot off the gas on Christian McCaffrey in week 17. Christian McCaffrey only played 10 snaps in week 17 of last season. Now this year, Christian McCaffrey has access to records. I actually don't have them in front of me now. I apologize for that, but he's like a certain amount of yards short of, I think he's like 70 receiving yards short of 1,000, and he's also like 246 or something like that total yards short of Chris Johnson's record for yards from scrimmage. Do they send Christian McCaffrey out there to play every single snap this year in week 17 when last year he only played 10 snaps? I definitely think they'll try to get him the 1,000. Like, I think that's for sure. Will he play the whole game? I can't say that for sure. And, that could be a really donkey take because obviously he's really likely to score 25, 30 points if he plays the whole game. We saw Will Grier do the same thing that Kyle Allen did. Just check it down to McCaffrey on every single play. So, and also, Christian McCaffrey could benefit because DJ Moore, I expect to miss with a concussion. So I don't know. There's stuff to think about there, and we'll see. On the Saints side, it's complicated, man. Like, they're the 3 seed right now, right? And they could still get a bye. But the only way they get that bye, the direct way they get that bye is with a win and a Packers loss, right? But let's say the Packers win. They're 13-point favorites. Well, then it doesn't really matter. Even if the Saints lose, they can end up with a bye via Seahawks win because the Seahawks will be NFC West champs. And then the Seahawks lose a tiebreaker to the Saints. So I guess my point is that if the Packers win and they're 13-point favorites, that the Saints game basically means nothing. Now, they do play at the same time. So, it's similar to that other thing we just talked about where maybe it's halftime. The Packers are up 30-0. You have some risk with the Saints. But generally speaking, I don't think there's a lot of risk with the Saints. But Sean Payton's expressed regret before about a Week 17 game like 5 years ago where he played all his starters and a bunch of them got hurt. So, I don't know. I think on these situations, like there's like 5 or 10% risk. I feel good about the Saints. I don't feel as good as I possibly could about the Saints.
Okay, so can we talk about the records for just a second?
Yeah.
He is 67 receiving yards away from that 1K, becoming the 3rd player in the history of the NFL to have a 1K season. I think that is very much in play.
Yeah.
And if he gets those 67 on, let's say, 7 catches, right? That sounds reasonable. And that's about what his numbers would suggest is about his average, unless he catches 1 catch for 67 yards and a touchdown, right? But even if he gets the touchdown, that becomes like 6 more catches anyway. So we're putting him at a 13.5-point floor at very worst, right? Just the yards and the catches to get there. So I think that's realistic. If he does not rush one time, if they just feed him the ball the first 2 drives and just get him catches and yards and whatever, and get him out of there. As Adam has said, they rested him last year. To get to the Chris Johnson record of 2,509 yards, we're talking about 215 scrimmage yards? Now, that's a different story. If you think that there's a realistic possibility, and Pete seems to have his Texas Instruments calculator out based on that, getting the true percentage odds from that other game that he did with the no vig and everything else, maybe he can give us what percent chance Christian McCaffrey has. Do you have like a cosine or a sine equation in that TI calculator that'll let you get to the point where we know what percent chance you think Christian McCaffrey gets to a 215-yard game?
See, that's what I've tried to do a little bit of work on that, but I think not to get too deep on this, but I think that's what the best players in DFS are doing that I certainly need to improve on, is they're very good at calculating the percentage chance for all these different range of outcomes. So in theory, if you had, I think with some machine learning, some other cool things, you could actually have a good idea of the distribution of production for Christian McCaffrey, and you could answer that with some confidence. But fortunately, I do not. Big free calculators for the game are very easy, simple calculations. And for the Saints, we can do it. I mean, the Lions have about a 16% chance, and I actually haven't plugged in the 49ers line yet. But, that's going to be another game where it's kind of that same range of outcomes. So there's multiple ways, at least, for the Saints here. And I think it's a little better situation than the Chiefs, I guess, thinking about it more. But, in terms of the players, I mean, Michael Thomas has been so ridiculous all year. I don't know if you guys saw, he had that video that went viral where he went into the hospital, gave a gift, and you could see his hand. So that's a little concerning, considering the guy is literally like does he have a drop this year? Does Michael Thomas have a drop? Like one, or does he?
Yeah,
I don't
he's
know.
had a couple, yeah.
Couple drops. But he still has one of the highest catch rates, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Guy's the man. But he's 9,900.
He has nothing to play for either, right? Like, they got him the record.
Yeah, he
Like,
passed Marvin Harrison last
reason.
week.
There's no reason to force him in there for personal records or incentives or anything else. He's had a fantastic season. So like that doesn't exist for him, where it does for Christian McCaffrey. And like, even if Christian McCaffrey gets it on let's say he gets the record on the first, not the record. Let's say he gets the 1K on the first drive. They get a touchback. They get him the ball. He busts off like a 40-yarder. Then they give him a couple more catches, and he gets to 70 yards receiving, 68 yards receiving to get to that, to get to the number. The coach is going to say, I'm going to pull you. There's zero chance Christian McCaffrey wants to come off this field. He's going to fight to stay on the field and fight with his guys, right? I don't think he's going to sit voluntarily. He's going to try and beg to stay out there. But what if he does get that on the first drive? Now 215 from scrimmage is definitely in play. So is this a situation where as this game goes, and this is stuff that's completely out of our control, and this is stuff that's complete guesswork in a white coat at this point, but the earlier he gets that 67 yards, I think plays more into the hands of them letting him go for that 215. Where if he only gets that 67 around halftime, and he's got maybe 13 rushing yards or something, I don't think that they try and force it to him in the second half. But if he's got like 120 scrimmage yards in the first half, let's say they hand him off like a little sprint draw or something, and he goes for 40, and then he gets 70 yards receiving, they may be able to talk that coaching staff into letting him just go for it. And the whole team has nothing to play for except getting him this record.
Yeah. And they've actually been vocal. I mean, they've actually said in the media, we want to get Christian McCaffrey records.
Yeah. That's the only thing they have to play for, and they're pissed. Greg Olson, your boy, Pete, G-Reg, is not pleased with the way things have gone this year, where this could be a positive thing for them as a team collectively going into the offseason.
G-Reg and his third leg. The guy's the all-time legend. Real quick on the other math, Seahawks have a 36.73% chance of being free based on our fine friends at DraftKings, their money line odds. So yeah, Saints, there's a lot of ways that it can work out. They should play their guys. And Kamara is the other player I wanted to talk about. Gave the stats last week about his elusiveness and just how the high ankle sprain had zapped, some of the things that made him special. And of course, he goes nuts last week, but so many other running backs went nuts. How do you feel about Kamara, Adam, as a play? We do have some really good running backs. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey in this game is the really big spend-up option. But what are your thoughts on Kamara versus some of these other high-end running backs?
Yeah, last thing on McCaffrey, he's 93 yards ahead of Nick Chubb for the rushing title also. So, he needs some rushing yards to secure that title as well. I mean, the same story with Alvin Kamara every week. Like, do we change our opinion on him because he happened to find the end zone last week? I just think it kind of is what it is. Like, I mean, his usage is really strong. He's going to catch 4 to 6 passes. He has an awesome floor, and hopefully he finds the end zone, Yeah.
Chubb's ahead of McCaffrey for the rushing title.
Chubb is ahead of McCaffrey. He's 93 yards behind. Sorry, I misspoke. Yeah.
A lot of motivation here, boys. A lot of motivation, a lot of plays. That could be a game that deciphers how the slate goes for sure. Another one right now that actually has the highest total on the slate is the Falcons at Buccaneers with a 47 total. Neither team has any motivation. Adam, what are the news and notes here?
Say that game one more time. I'm still lost in all these Christian McCaffrey stats I'm reading.
Falcons and Buccaneers, highest total on the board. I've seen anywhere from 47 to 48. Bucks favored by 1. No motivation, but two teams that have provided us with a lot of fantasy goodness, and the Julio Jones situation is interesting to monitor as well.
Yeah, I mean, two teams that I think have played well down the stretch. Like the Falcons, I think are 5-2 in their last 7. The offense has been playing really, really well, and since they lost Calvin Ridley, I mean, Julio Jones has 23 catches, 300 yards, and 2 touchdowns. It's outrageous. I think people underestimate the Bucs defense. Like, Bucs have some serious players up front. Like, there's major risk for Matt Ryan to be under a lot of pressure here. That said, it's certainly a good spot for Ryan and Julio. Just you don't attempt to run the football on the Bucs, and that's why the Bucs give up a lot of passing stats. You just running against them is just like not an option. So I think Julio is interesting. On the other side, Justin Watson and Brashad Perriman had the roles we expected them to have, and I was impressed with Brashad Perriman. I mean, his role definitely changed. He was not just running vertical routes. They hit him on slants. He made some physical catches, took some big hits, and I mean, he looked really, really good. So I actually don't think that he's necessarily overpriced. I know he's expensive. I don't think he's overpriced. And then the guy that I think is probably clearly underpriced is Justin Watson, who would have had a huge game if he didn't stumble coming out of his break on one of those first drives on Saturday. Would have been open for a touchdown. And, Justin Watson's production, I think, has been disappointing, but he's going to be playing every snap with Jameis Winston at home against the Falcons. And yeah, and a guy that, kind of broke out on that Saturday slate in front of everybody was Ronald Jones, who played an awesome game. There's always risk that Peyton Barber is going to step in there, that Ronald Jones loses all pass down work to Dare Gunawable, but, Ronald Jones at least showed that he has a ceiling on Saturday.
I mean, we're getting the Julio Jones that we always wanted now that Calvin Ridley is out. And I'm not cheering for anybody to be injured. I'm just stating a fact that in the couple of weeks that he's been out, we're getting way more deep targets for Julio Jones than we were getting before, with 4 and 6 over the last 2 weeks. We're getting way more end zone targets for Julio Jones than we gotten before. Where I think from week 3 until 2 weeks ago, he had gotten 2 end zone targets, and then he had gotten like 4 end zone targets the couple of games that Ridley was out. Now we've got a matchup with Tampa Bay, which of the last 11 games that the Falcons have played Tampa Bay, he has seen 10 or more targets in those games, including the game in week 12 where he busted with only 11.8 DraftKings points. He did have 10 targets that day. So at least they still fed him the ball, but it was a situation just like Adam said where the Tampa Bay Bucs were able to get to him through that horrible offensive line. The problem with the Bucs is their ability to cover on the outside. The problem with Atlanta and Matt Ryan is that if they can't keep people away from Matt Ryan, he can't attack the weakness on the outside for Tampa Bay. Pete, my question for you is very simple. If we stack Jameis with any one or combination of his pass catchers this week, should we bring it back with the Falcons defense that's only 3,400 and likely to catch a couple of passes from Jameis?
I mean, it's so ridiculous. I mean, O.J. Howard just completely boned me this year. The Bucs defense has actually been really good over the second half of the season. Jameis just keeps putting them in the absolute stoneware situation. I mean, I don't think people realize how bad it's been. I mean, for these defenses, you see it a lot. When they're fresh, it's much easier to play well. And, when they get these great big stops and goal line stands and whatever else, it's huge. And then Jameis just gives the ball right back. So I think the Buccaneers defense has been put in a ton of situations that are really bad. And actually have quite a bit of respect for how they've played the second half of the season. So that's an interesting dynamic. Yeah, in terms of stacking up Jameis with the opposing defense, it definitely has worked so far this year. So I don't think it's not a bad idea. And yeah, in terms of the weaponry here, I mean, it's definitely a lot of really good players. I mean, what do we think about? I mean, Devontae Freeman had such a hot start, but then they definitely used Brian Hill and Olsen got the touchdown. So there's a lot of weird things with this game. I see it being very fantasy friendly, but I still have some questions in terms of how things will play out. Do you think both teams, if this is close, will just play their best players, Adam? Or do you see, I don't know. I know this is a hard game to decipher.
No, I would expect them to play the way they've been playing the last few weeks. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah. All right. Let's move to the late games. We have the Eagles at the Giants first, and the Eagles win this game. They are in the playoffs. They're a 4-point favorite, Adam, with a 45 total. What are the news and notes here?
Yeah, winning, they're in for the Eagles. I mean, it's amazing. They've been so bad all year, and I can't believe that they all have to do is beat the Giants. I don't think the Giants are going to roll over, man. I mean, and I'm biased on Daniel Jones because I've talked plenty about how Daniel Jones was ridiculous in the preseason, and he has been showing an awesome fantasy ceiling in the regular season. He has 4 games with more than 30 DraftKings points already this year. I mean, quarterbacks don't score over 30 that often. Daniel Jones has done it 4 times in just 12 starts. So, he doesn't have Evan Ingram, which hurts, I think, but Slayton, Tate, Barkley, Shepard, he's got serious weapons. The Eagles struggle so badly to cover in the back end. I mean, I think that it's certainly no pushover for the Eagles. Zach Ertz is the big news to watch here. He's questionable with a rib issue. Obviously, it's a huge game. If he can go and get injected, I assume he'll go. But, I could see them relying more on Dallas Goedert like they did last week when Ertz was playing but limited and Goddard ended up going off. Jordan Howard looks like he'll be back, but the coaches say, we're just going to get Jordan Howard up to game shape. We're still going to ride with Miles Sanders and Boston Scott. Nelson Aguilar, I don't expect to play again, which means another week as the number 1 wideout with Greg Ward as number 1 wideout for Carson Wentz. So yeah, I think this is an interesting game and a game that has a chance to be a real shootout. I mean, these Daniel Jones games, similar to Ryan Fitzpatrick, have chances to be real shootouts every single week because Giants defense is absolutely atrocious and Daniel Jones can shred, man. I mean, I don't know why people are down on Daniel Jones. He's just been an awesome fantasy player all year.
First thing I'm going to need you to do is put some respect on Caden Smith's name.
Yeah.
You didn't mention him in that list of players that have done well with Daniel Jones, 21.5 points and 13 points in his last 2 games played with Danny Dimes. You want to rectify that, Adam? Or you
yeah, I mean, Red Ellison is in theory questionable, but I agree with you that Red Ellison is probably out.
Okay. I'm just saying the kid's been good, but I didn't even know what a Caden Smith was like a month ago. And now it's like, yeah, I think Caden Smith's a viable play at tight end week in, week out. Shepard at 6,200, I think, is viable here. Adam mentioned all the things that we have to get at in this game. I think that it's a game that we can stack. As bad a year as Wentz had, he's been really solid for the last 4 games. The last month, he has kind of turned this season around, and obviously, as you see, he's got them in position to possibly make the playoffs. But fantasy-wise is what we kind of care about more, and he's been a lot more efficient. And it's like, as his wide receivers kept getting hurt, he started getting much better, right? And as Jordan Howard left and we have a viable pass-catching wide receiver on the field at all times, whether it was Sanders or Scott, amazingly, Carson Wentz's efficiency got better, and efficiency, not volume, is what leads to quarterback scoring in fantasy. But when you have a guy that's being more efficient and throwing for 40 plus attempts a game, you have that volume plus efficiency, which is going to push him over 20 points every single game. And he's been, he has not been really highly priced. Last week, 5,800. This week, 61 against the Giants D that we've been attacking all year. I think this is a great game stacking possibility for all the reasons that both Adam and I have said. As far as individual players, Pete, you got anything you want to add? We've basically named everybody in this game.
Yeah, you guys named everyone. I mean, Dallas Goedert is a stud, and obviously, there's a huge connection that Ertz and Wentz have there. There's a million narratives that Adam's talked about between the two of them, but clearly the connection is huge. And, with his uncertainty and just kind of what he's dealing with, I expect Goddard to be heavily involved again. Really encouraging usage last week. And I mean, I think if Goddard was on another team, we'd talk about him as a borderline elite tight end. I think he's very similar to like a Hunter Henry type, really talented, big player, and obviously excels when given the opportunity. So watching him, I mean, I love the Daniel Jones talk. I think this is a great game to stack up. All the weapons are there. Saquon's looking good again. And the Eagles have had a lot of injuries, especially on the defensive side as well. So I think this is a really interesting game to basically stack up, and there's a lot of options. And we'll see. I think because there's so many options, there won't be a lot of concentrated ownership. So great tournament game. Any final thoughts here, guys, or are we safe to move on?
Let's do it.
All right. Titans at Texans. And this is a weird motivation game here. Titans are favored by 3.5 at the Texans with a 45 total. News, notes, and motivation, Adam.
Yeah, Titans' motivation is clear. I mean, they need to win to get in as the number 6 seed. If not, they open the door for Pittsburgh or Oakland to catch them. The Texans, on the other hand, they will be the AFC's number 3 or number 4 seed. Does that matter to them? I don't know. And also, it's weird because the Chiefs play at 1 p.m. And so let's say the Chiefs play at 1 p.m. and they beat the Chargers. Well, then the Texans are playing for literally 0. So obviously, the market is telling you there's major concerns about Houston's motivation since the Titans are favored on the road by 3.5. I would expect that line to actually creep higher probably as people come to realize that there's a legit chance Deshaun Watson and the Texans starters don't play. I mean, we know Will Fuller is not going to play. Other injury note, Derrick Henry. I think he could have played last week if the game meant anything to the Titans. It didn't. Derrick Henry's back practicing this week. I think Derrick Henry will be a full blast for this must-win game. And, Texans defense is already just a mess. And so if they're playing second stringers, pretty good spot, I think, for Derrick Henry, although he is expensive and we know his pass catching role is limited.
Yeah, I agree with all that. But the Texans defense, as you've seen against opposing running backs, 106 rushing yards against Tampa, team that doesn't really run the ball a lot. Against Tennessee, 163 on the ground. New England, 145 on the ground. Indy, 175 on the ground. Baltimore, 256 on the ground. But again, Baltimore, I guess we have to kind of take with a grain of salt because they play a different sort of football than anybody else at this level. I think this is a very interesting spot for Derrick Henry because I don't think he's going to grade as well in a lot of optimizers or grade as well in a lot of projection sets as other running backs. And people are going to want to click Christian McCaffrey for all the reasons that we mentioned before and how good he's been this year, how great he's been this year, which leaves somebody like Derrick Henry kind of sitting out there. And then you got the whack-a-mole theory with Aaron Jones if people chasing that game from last week, especially if Williams is out, which to me puts Derrick Henry as the 4th or 5th most popular running back at 7,800 or above. right? And if anybody's got a chance at 25 to 35 fantasy points, it's Derrick Henry on any week, let alone a week against a defense that has not shown the ability to stop teams from running the ball.
Yeah. Derrick Henry's a great play, and I think A.J. Brown, even at an expensive tag, is a really strong play. I mean, the respect that he's getting. I mean, the Saints shadowed him entirely with Lattimore, and I think the NFL realizes this guy is, a full-blown stud already. And, the Texans don't really have the personnel. They don't have a great pass rush. Tannehill's been playing well. They don't have weather concerns. It's indoors. So I think there's a lot of ways you can go about it. We'll see as we get more news on this game. I assume Derrick Henry, he has the probable tag and, full go. He's just, this hamstring's been a nagging thing, but he's been able to play through it. So I agree. He's a really good tournament play. And Corey Davis is someone I'll always bring up, but he's thin. I mean, he's cheap and he's got a questionable tag next to him, but I'm assuming he's going to go. And as teams pay more and more attention to A.J. Brown, I mean, he is a first-round pick. So we'll see if Corey Davis can ever do it. But, yeah, any final thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, I have a honest question about Lattimore and Brown.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that comes down to the fact that they really don't have any other big-time pass catchers, and Derrick Henry was completely out, and it's like, well, they have one thing. We just have to shut down that one thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was part of it for sure. We've talked about it. Just A.J. Brown, from the eye test just stands out, and then you see these huge ceiling games, and it's just like he's got that rare man amongst boys elite receiver upside, and I think the NFL has taken note. And obviously, the offense becomes more dynamic if the teams have to worry a lot about Derrick Henry. I mean, Deion Lewis. I mean, Dusty Dion. That guy's – that's a proper use of Dusty. So, yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Al, and we'll see how the Houston schemes against him. Let's keep moving because we do have more games. Redskins at Cowboys. Cowboys favored by 10.5, 44.5 total. Garrett's last chance here, Adam. I mean – Cowboys just unbelievably bad execution this year. Huge loss last week. But now they get the Redskins. They're 10.5 point favorites. We still have the Dak Prescott stuff. I mean, there's the weird Amari thing. There's so many weird things going on here. What are the news, notes, and motivation?
Yeah, I mean, Cowboys are still live. They need a win, and they need the Eagles to lose. Both these teams play at the same time, so obviously the Cowboys will be all out. I thought Dak looked okay in that game. I'm not sure that his injury was the reason that they lost, but the Amari Cooper thing was just ridiculous, man. I mean, I had a reasonable team in the 1500 and had Amari on it, and I was just like, God, I mean, give me something, dude. I mean, for them to bench Amari in like the key points of the game for Tavon Austin, Amari must be hurt. I mean, you just can't do that unless Amari's hurt, and they can't admit that Amari's hurt because they didn't put him on the injury report. So I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on with Amari. I know that Gallup and Randall Cobb are likely to play every snap. I can't say that for Amari in this spot, but man, if you knew that Dak was healthy and Amari was healthy, home against the Redskins in a must-win game would be just an awesome, awesome spot. Al's mentioned Ezekiel Elliott earlier. I mean, this is the best spot I think that we've seen for Zeke. Like, this is a legit, home run spot for Zeke. So I certainly like Zeke this week. On the other side, Terry McLaurin, I would not expect to play. He's in the concussion protocol. That'll leave them with like Steve Sims and Kelvin Harmon, and they'll be catching passes from Case Keenum, who honestly might be an upgrade on Dwayne Haskins. So, I think Steve Sims was benefiting a lot from Terry McLaurin being out there, but Steve Sims has played really well. So, yeah, just worth noting there.
Washington's allowing the third most red zone drives a game in the league at 3.7. 4 straight games with multiple rush touchdowns or 7 receptions for Zeke. So he's got a really good floor plus ceiling coming into this game. And 7 times this year, running back has scored 23 or more points on DraftKings against Washington. So Zeke's only 8,000. It feels like he should be like 9,000 or 9,200 based on the way kind of pricing is this week. I don't feel that he's all that far behind Christian McCaffrey unless they go for that 220 scrimmage yard game from Christian McCaffrey and feed him like 10 or 12 catches or 15 catches to try and get him there. Ezekiel Elliott to me is the number 2 running back on the slate overall, just raw projection for him versus McCaffrey. And that's only if McCaffrey plays the full game, where I think we know that Zeke's going to play the full game. We can't always say that 100% of the time this week about Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah. A lot to unpack on the Dallas side, but I think Adam made a really sharp point about the Washington side, specifically about Sims. So I think people are going to look at his game log, and he's been great, and just say, oh, now, with the assumption McLaurin's out, that he's just going to see more volume and they're going to shift the targets from McLaurin. And I think in general, I have a tendency to maybe be too conservative. I get that there's, going to be so many passes thrown and you have to distribute the targets, but I really value these star players and the positive impact that I think they have on the secondary guys. So like A.J. Brown we were just talking about with Washington, Terry McLaurin is clearly, someone that the other team is thinking a lot about, given his speed and just what he's done this year. So because of the attention on McLaurin, I think it really helped someone like Steven Sims. So maybe he still sees really good volume, but I would think it would hurt the efficiency for him because of the impact that it just has on the Washington offense. And that's something I want to dig into more this offseason, is really try to look back and just see the data on some of these secondary guys when they get, thrusted into the number one role and that overall impact. With the Dallas guys, I think Michael Gallup stands out as a super elite play. We don't have concerns about his usage and his snaps, 11 targets last week. Just missed a huge game because he had 98 yards and easily could have had a touchdown on a couple different plays. So I think he's really strong. Amari at home has been awesome. Very strange what happened with Tavon Austin. And obviously there's concerns with Dak, but he's also been awesome at home. And maybe, he feels great and they just come out and just throttle his team. So I like the passing game in tournaments. I think the safe option for sure is Zeke. I haven't been high on Zeke really this whole year, but this is an absolute home run spot. And I expect Zeke to be a staple in cash games for a lot of people. Let's keep it moving. We have the Steelers at Ravens. Steelers favored by 2. We know the Ravens are going to be sitting their guys here. Adam, news, notes, and motivation.
Yeah, congrats to the Ravens. They'll be the number 1 seed in the AFC. Lamar Jackson's not going to play. Mark Ingram's not going to play. I'd be surprised if Marquise Brown or Mark Andrews played. And it's tough for Robert Griffin to come in there with all the backups, and I don't think they're going to try to run the same scheme that they were running with Lamar. In a meaningless game, are you really going to ask Robert Griffin to run the ball 15 times? I don't think that'd really be too fair to him. So I don't know exactly what the Ravens are going to do. I would assume that their game plan will be largely hand the ball off to Gus Edwards and Justice Hill and, have Robert Griffin try to be a pocket passer. Mason Rudolph is hurt again, so Duck Hodges will start. James Conner is banged up. I would consider James Conner truly questionable for this game. They've played Benny Snell and Jalen Samuels, and they've even given Kerrith White touches. So I don't know. There's not a lot to like here. Juju's back with Deontay Johnson and James Washington, and Duck Hodges starting. I don't know. It's just kind of a messy situation for me that I think will likely end up pretty low scoring.
My question is Robert Griffin III. This offense.
Question.
This offense is set to run a specific way, right? And that's not going to change with the personnel that they have running it. The offense is still going to put defensive players to a question at certain decision points, which leaves the offense with an answer. If this, then that, which is the way Baltimore runs their offense. If the defensive end does this, then you do that. If it's a pass play, if the defensive players come here, then you throw there. That's not going to change. Now, obviously, I don't think that Robert Griffin III is the same talent level as Lamar Jackson. But in this offense, Robert Griffin can have a very good game. He is still quite mobile. He still can run. There is still that threat of that from him. He's still going to have enough weapons for him to enact with. We saw Justice Hill look like the real deal last week. Anytime he touched it, he looked extremely exciting, which is what we all looked for before. Gus Edwards looks as strong as Mark Ingram every time he touches the ball. Obviously, there's a step down in talent when you come from Ingram to Edwards, but do running backs really matter, especially in an offense like this? I don't know if we can say definitively that one is that much better than the other within this offense. I think there's a very good chance for RG3 to have a 20-plus point fantasy day against Pittsburgh with maybe 40 or 50 yards rushing, with maybe 180 to 210 passing yards, and then it comes down to how efficient he can be in the red zone if they're able to move the ball, or if he basically gets vultured by all the running backs for touchdowns. Now, I'm not expecting 35 or 40 points out of the Ravens, but it doesn't take that to pay off that $5,100 salary. If he gets to 20 points, you're talking about a 4X situation at $5,100. Pete, do you think he has that sort of thing in him this week, or are you selling on RG3?
I think he has it in him. I mean, this game, I've just twisted myself into an absolute pretzel. First off, the Steelers have a good defense, so that scares me a little bit. I do agree with you, Al, though. I think the Ravens will still run their similar offense. And the thing I start thinking about is, Mark Ingram has this calf strain. Like, how healthy, is he going to be for the playoffs? Like, what's the optimal way? Like, I like Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. I think they're talented players and, could easily have good games, and they're intriguing value. Is RG3 a guy I want to play? I have no idea. Then I look at the other side and I say, Ravens defense has been awesome, but they have no incentive. Who are they going to throw out there? Are they going to go deep into the thing just to take a look at guys and not risk any players that could be critical to their playoff run? I don't know. You have freaking Duck Hodges, who I think is terrible, and I actually love the receiver weaponry for the Steelers. Juju's back. Washington has flashed at times, and Deontay Johnson has really impressed me. This guy's got that quick twitch. He gets wide open quite often, and he's been, quietly really good with awful quarterbacking. So I like the weaponry, but I don't know. I can't trust Hodges, and I just don't know what the Ravens are going to roll out there. And it's a divisional game, and it's a 37 total. So I talk myself into some of the plays, and then I talk myself out of them, and I'm a twisted pretzel. Levitan, can you provide any clarity to what Al and I just said?
Yeah, I'm out, man. I mean, the Steelers defense is one of the best in the league, and you're asking Robert Griffin and a bunch of backups to play against it. I don't.
What about the Steelers side? It's the Ravens throw out second and third stringers.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. They have Duck Hodges. They can't even run an NFL offense.
All right, that's the easy way to think about it. I just don't want to be lazy and just toss it out, but that's what the line's saying, and that's probably the sharp take. Moving to the Colts at Jaguars. Colts are favored by 3.5, 43 total. News, notes, motivation, Levitan, which is none, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Colts were limited as of week 15. They still played it straight in week 16, but, T.Y. Hilton remained limited, and, we saw Jordan Wilkins play some. It just is what it is, I think, with the Colts at this point. The Jaguars have been one of the worst teams in the NFL for the last 5 or 6 weeks. I've been fortunate to no matter what I think about Leonard Fournette's usage, which is hard for me to do, to ignore usage and think about other things. But this offense has been so bad. I have not been tempted one time in the last month to play Leonard Fournette, and then that has paid off. This is a fine spot for Fournette. I mean, his usage is still really strong. I'm just worried about this team as a whole. We'll see on DJ Chark. He's still limited. It looked like he was limited a bit last week. I would assume that he plays in week 17, but we'll see. But yeah, I think there's some one-off plays that you can pick out here. It's hard to be too excited about any of them because we're not really seeing any real role changes or motivation changes or anything like that.
Can we run out Marlon Mack against a team that basically just gives it up to opposing running backs all the time?
Yeah.
Pete?
I love Marlon Mack. I roll him out all the time. It's been mixed results.
How tilted were you on the final drive last week when he had 95 yards and they get the ball to ice the game and they bring in
all
Wilkins
the good
who gets
teams
all the money?
I had all the one really nice thing about Marlon Mack last week is I played Marlon Mack Colts D all over. And the Colts D obviously broke the slate, but Marlon Mack just so close. And actually, he had a solid game, but the way that it worked out last week, you had so many big performances at running back that Marlon Mack actually hurt you in the tournament. So that was super frustrating. My best team and all the high equity teams had Marlon Mack, but Colts D was great. I think Colts D is really interesting again. I think Marlon Mack is fine. I mean, I don't know, T.Y. Hilton maybe as a dart throw. It's just a weird spot with the lack of motivation, but we've seen this every year. And that's something I'm really trying to think about for tournaments is these games that don't have clear motivation or people are unsure. I think the instant reaction for most people is just to throw it out and build around teams that are, playing for something, and everyone who's grinding, playing a ton of lineups, they're looking at that stuff. So I'm trying to identify these games that don't mean anything, but might have
Yeah.
low ownership and still a lot of scoring. And this certainly checks that box. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, the games that both teams are dead and have been dead for a while are great.
Yeah,
you know,
that's this game.
Yeah,
and the next game, which I'm super excited about. Let's move to the Raiders at Broncos. Broncos are favored by 3.5 here versus this Oakland team, and it is a really weird spot because Oakland can get in with like 4 things happening or something. Adam,
yeah, it's not that crazy. I mean, some of the things that need to happen are really likely to happen. So, like ESPN had simulations had Oakland 13% to make the playoffs, and Football Outsiders had Oakland 6% to make the playoffs. But like, they're far from drawing dead, and so I think they're going to be playing super hard. And Josh Jacobs had some infection.
Surgery.
Yeah, he had an infection that he had like removed last night. He's also dealing with a shoulder injury, so I would consider him questionable. But there's reports out there already that they still expect Josh Jacobs to play Sunday, so we'll see.
Why? What are they even doing?
They have a chance for the playoffs.
They're like 13% according to ESPN.
He has a picture of him getting surgery, and he's like,
he's the Walking Dead. He looks like a zombie right now. He's got like a big hole in his shoulder. He's running to the goal line like a zombie. Like, can you just play the other dude behind him who's done fine? You're going to kill this kid.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. He might end up getting held out anyways. We'll see. On the Denver side, nothing new really. Obviously, one of the best spots Courtland Sutton has seen all year.
Oh, baby. We are talking, boys. That's the big. I hope that was the biggest baby of the year because I am ecstatic to play some Courtland Sutton this week.
Yeah. So and it just kind of is what it is with Denver at this point. Drew Lock has shown capability to have big games, and the way you beat Oakland is by throwing the ball deep, and I think Drew Lock can do that. So yeah.
Pete, let me set you up on Courtland Sutton. Oakland's got the 3rd worst red zone defense in the league in terms of efficiency. They also allow the 4th most the most yards per play this season at 6.0. And wide receivers who've gotten 9 or more targets against the Raiders this year have averaged 18.9 DraftKings points per game. Talk to me about your boy, Courtland Sutton.
Well, you just gave some unbiased stats. I like that. I mean, first of
all, and here comes all the biased ones.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's listening to this knows, obviously a Bronco fan. I've been touting Courtland Sutton forever. So this comes with a huge amount of bias. And I think anyone, if you're listening to fantasy advice, you have to be able to recognize that. And I would be the first to admit I am beyond biased about Courtland Sutton. But I am this is the dream spot. This is the ultimate baby. I mean, the Raiders, as you just outlined, have gotten killed by the pass and have not been efficient. And, the Broncos at home, they're trying to get, rhythm and just building for the future with these young pieces. And I think Courtland Sutton is a huge reason Broncos fans should be excited about the future on offense. I think he's one of the top-end talented receivers. And hopefully Locke continues to play decently and maybe really improves next year, or they find a long-term top-end quarterback because if Courtland Sutton has that, he's going to really excel. And the other piece on this offense, they have the running backs. Lindsey, is an explosive, big play upside. I think he's interesting. And Noah Fant, I mean, he's a really talented player who has upside, less volume, but with his speed at tight end, he's another interesting one. So I think my Broncos are a really good play, and we'll see what happens with Jacobs. I mean, I have no problem playing some of these Raiders guys. This defense for Denver is not performed relative to expectation, and I believe we've had just stunning weather. It was like 60 degrees yesterday or 55 degrees here in Colorado. I think we're anticipating still some pretty solid weather just in general. So, yeah, it's not going to be as warm, but it's going to be sunny and like 40 degrees here in Colorado. So should be good weather, and I think this is a game you could do some mini stacks of. Am I crazy for going lock buttoning Courtland Sutton?
No.
Was that a quarterback pun?
Courtland Sutton and John Ross. Let's freaking run hot week 17. Last game on the docket is the Cardinals at Rams, and this is the definitive trickiest game to figure out. There's not even a line really anywhere within the markets. I've seen Rams favored by 5.5, and I've seen no line. I mean, there's just a lot going on here, Adam. Can you tell us what's going on with the news notes and lack of motivation?
Yeah. the Rams were eliminated officially from the playoffs last week. So anytime, it's the week after they're eliminated, there's always a ton of risk. The Rams have a history of being very aggressive resting guys. I would not feel comfortable, no matter what we hear from McVay, playing like Goff, Gurley, Cooks. I could see them even resting Robert Woods or Cooper Kupp. Gerald Everett, I would be surprised if he played. And in theory, that's really good news for Tyler Higbee, but maybe Tyler Higbee's too good now and he sits with the rest of the guys too. So I don't know, man. I would not feel great about the Rams guys. I would kind of think they're going to start Bortles in this game, and Bortles would be home against Arizona, one of the best possible matchups. But, if Higbee and Kupp and Woods and Cooks don't play, well, I don't know. That's tough for Bortles. Kyler Murray is very questionable, hurt his hamstring last week. It would probably be pretty surprising to see them force Kyler Murray out there. His backup is Brent Hundley. And Christian Kirk, it was weird. I didn't see a new injury for Christian Kirk, but all of a sudden he seemed like a true game time decision. And then he ends up playing and he catches 0 balls on 5 targets. I don't know what's going on with Christian Kirk right now, but it's scary enough for me to not really want to play him. So yeah, I think this game, the reason there's no line is because we honestly don't know who's going to start at quarterback for either team. And it's not that often you see that in the NFL.
Yeah, this is a crazy spot where we just don't know. So okay, assuming that Goff plays, I think that he's fine because of all the things that we've seen with quarterbacks against Arizona. Obviously, I think that Higbee would be fine if he plays as well. But we don't know. I'm sorry. I wish that we had some good information, and I wish that we could trust McVay, but we can't. So no matter what he says, that doesn't matter. There's certain coaches, it's like, okay, they say these things and it's like, okay, there's some truth to what they say. We can read into what they say. You can't read anything into what McVay says in any situation. He's just does not care. He's going to say whatever he feels that he has to say. It's the worst. So my expert advice for you here is I have no idea what the hell's going to happen.
Yep, me neither. Shout out to Kenyon Drake, though. Guy's been balling and pour one out for all the David Johnson owners this year. Some interesting, discussion on who was the worst pick of the year. David Johnson certainly got a little unlucky with injuries, but then this whole Kenyon Drake thing will be interesting to see what shakes out next year with that situation. But yeah, Kenyon Drake would be, I guess, the one guy that, I can at least endorse now, given the ceiling we've seen from him. And I would be surprised if he's not out there. And the Cardinals have shown a lot of interest in keeping him around.
But before we finish out here, I have a quote from Scott Turner, who is acting as the Panthers offensive coordinator. He just said 10 minutes ago, he will try to get the ball to Christian McCaffrey in any way he can on Sunday. He wants Christian McCaffrey to break records. So you can forget what I said about those 10 snaps in week 17 last year. I think it's pretty clear the Panthers seem very motivated to get Christian McCaffrey records. And at this point, I think I'm going to amend my take to where at this point I'd be surprised if Christian McCaffrey didn't play the whole game.
That'll make G-Reg and his third leg very happy.
So what you're saying is jam him in.
Well, I mean, if they're going to try to get him 215 yards, I would think that.
Yeah, so they're going to go for 215 yards. It's probably going to take about, 15 catches. So he's got a 35-point floor this week.
Yeah, I mean, if they're really going for that, then yes, I think I'll be trying to play him, but we'll see.
Yeah. I think that's
we will be back for the playoffs. I think we were talking pre-pod. Historically, we've done the wild card and divisional rounds. I think that is going to be the plan for the podcast. Boys, it's truly been so much fun doing this with you again through the regular season. And we have for the actual four-man, I think we have like a real battle here for the last. Are we going to run that into the playoffs too? I guess that's something we have to decide.
We have not previously.
We have not. No, week 17 is the last week.
Okay, so I got the win last week. I need. Where do we have the updated standings here?
I think me and you are tied, and Al is one behind. Correct.
And then that means the listener there's 16 wins, right?
7.
So everyone has 4.
There's 17 wins.
No, I know, but that's what I'm saying. So right now there's 16. How could someone be behind? It'd either be some combination of like 4, 4, 5, 3.
I don't know. Counting is hard.
I don't have. Get Al's intern on it. I don't know. I have no idea.
I'm just a guy that lives in an apartment who may or may not have a chicken. Like I need to get an intern on Smizmeric Industries over here. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us once again. Appreciate you tuning in. We will catch up to you next week for the wild card round. We got 2 podcasts left for this season's versions of the Edge with the 3-man, and then Adam's got a couple of solo pods. Maybe he can dig into his holiday rankings next week. But for Adam and for Pete, for producer Luke, and for Jerry, who's been awfully quiet this year, I'm out. We'll catch you later. Bye.
We are promoters at DraftKings and also avid fans. Our usernames are Adam Levitan, Al Smizzle, and CSU Ram 88. We may sometimes play on our personal accounts in the games that we offer advice on. Although we have expressed our personal view on the games and strategies in this podcast, they do not necessarily reflect the views of DraftKings, and we also may deploy different players and strategies than what we recommended in this podcast.